We have Jan Thornton Jones with us today, and she's going to be talking about her newly released book, Last Letter to Gettysburg. Here's Jan.
Thank you, Kathy, and Headline Books. I appreciate you all providing me this opportunity so very much. Again, I'm Jan Thornton Jones. I'm a retired early childhood teacher. I've taught other subjects besides early childhood, but I must admit my love for teaching was third grade and below. I just love the younger children. I have a degree in elementary education and do have a minor in history or social studies. So history is certainly one of my interests and my loves. I have 2 master's degrees. One of them is in communication studies, and the second one is in early intervention special education. I finished my teaching before I retired with teaching preschoolers and pre-K, and I loved it. This is my 3rd book to be published, but it's my first by Headline Books. So again, Kathy, I thank you so much. It is said that a people without the knowledge of their past history, origin, and culture is like a tree without roots. I feel that it is essential that history be taught to our children. It is through history that we have an understanding of who we are and where we have been. I've always been fascinated by the stories from the Civil War, particularly stories of heroism, patriotism, and the bravery of the soldiers on both sides of the Civil War. Through my desire to teach a bit of this history to today's children and my desire to impart some important values, the idea of this book was born. My book is called Last Letter to Gettysburg. Now, who would I recommend read it? Well, I might recommend starting at 4th grade. 3rd graders, some 3rd graders would be mature enough to understand it and read it, maybe if it were read orally to them especially, with some explanation. But I would probably recommend 4th graders, and then it's probably on a reading level of up to 6th to 7th grade. However, I have heard so many of my adult friends who have said that they have loved this book and have actually gotten teary-eyed over it. So I'm going to recommend that it be for 4th grade up through adults. The story is historical fiction. The characters of Levi and his family are totally fictional, but all of the events and the facts surrounding the story are factual. And in fact, I wanted to mention that in the story, Levi gets to meet President Lincoln. Now that sounds a little far-fetched by today's standards, but at the time, the White House was open. People could knock on the door and go in and talk to the president. So it's not too far-fetched that Levi would be able to speak to President Lincoln as he does in the book. And also, I want to point out that when President Lincoln gives this address, this speech in this book, we later know it to be the Gettysburg Address. We also know that he was very disappointed in himself. He felt that the speech had been a complete flop. There was just a smattering of applause, and he just really felt that it had not gone over very well at all. So I just wanted to throw some of those details in as a backdrop of my story. I believe that this story of the last letter to Gettysburg is a unique story. It's unique in that it introduces the young reader to many factual aspects of the very complex Civil War, but it also avoids much of the horror of the war. Although Levi's father is killed in battle, I handled it very carefully, and I don't believe that it is something that would upset any of the children who read the story. And in fact, Levi feels and knows for sure that his father is a hero and is very proud of him. The book is a little complicated in that it's comprised into two parts. The first part is Papa's last letter that was written to Levi and his mother. The letter, however, does not arrive until after Papa's death. Levi treasures this letter. He reads it over and over again. He treasures each last word from his father and each last bit of advice. I tried to write Papa's letter in the style of that day so that it includes much beautiful and expressive language and contains many thoughts on patriotism and self-sacrifice. Now, the second part of the book is the story of our young character, Levi. Levi is growing up in Gettysburg following the Battle of Gettysburg there. Levi is hoping to meet President Lincoln at the dedication ceremony of the cemetery there in Gettysburg. The story also introduces the young reader to the very famous Gettysburg Address. Now, I do want to warn you that for sake of brevity, in the book, I did not have the entire Gettysburg Address written. In the book, you just see that I have some thoughts from the Gettysburg Address. Now, the two parts of the book, Papa's letter and the actual story of Levi, are interwoven. Papa's thoughts from his letter keep showing up in Levi's story. Now, the two parts of the story could certainly be read separately. However, my intention was that bits and pieces of Papa's letter be intertwined with Levi's story. And that is the way that I will read it. Before I begin reading the story, I would like to show you, as if I were reading this to a classroom of students, I'd like to show you two items that are integral to the story. Papa's last letter, "My dearest Sarah and Levi," he begins. So here's Papa's last letter, and in the story you're going to hear about a button that Levi treasures that was cut off from Papa's uniform. So these two items, the letter and the button, are very integral, and you'll understand them better as you get into the story. So at this time, I'm going to attempt to switch back over to my book, and I'm going to read you the last letter to Gettysburg. And I just hope that you can sit back and just enjoy this historical fiction. Last letter to Gettysburg. Let me see if I can make this a little bigger here. There we go. I'm just trying to adjust where I'm seeing this screen. There we go. All right, folks, thanks for your patience. Last letter to Gettysburg. And I love the sepia tone, the brown tones that Kathy and her group did on this book for me. I'm just so pleased with it. And I hope that you enjoy some of the photos and maps that you will see as we go through this book. But first of all, I want to show that this book is dedicated with love to my husband and my best friend, Don Jones. You have encouraged me to follow my dreams, edited my books, and inspired me with your love and knowledge of history. I couldn't have written this book without you. Levi climbed to the top of a small hill outside his home in Gettysburg, Pennsylvania. His chores for the day were finished, and Mama had not yet called him for supper. He leaned against the trunk of a tree and watched as darkness began to fall over the town he and his parents had always called home. His papa had been a teacher at the Pennsylvania College at Gettysburg. Mama had taught piano and voice lessons to the daughters of the well-to-do families in the town. Although the Martins were not wealthy, they were well liked around town and respected as fine educators. Life was good for Levi. He had loving parents and a small but pretty house on the outskirts of Gettysburg, and he was free to roam the beautiful hills surrounding the little town. Levi remembered the day that Papa told him they needed to have an important talk. He and Papa had walked up the hill and stood leaning against this very tree. "Son," he said, "I'm going off to war. Several of the men from town have already joined up with the Union Army. We will be assigned to a regiment of soldiers from Pennsylvania." And then we began Papa's letter on the left side of the page. "My dearest Sarah and Levi, oh, how I would love to see each of you. I have missed you so much. I dream of walking together again through the peaceful fields of Gettysburg with both of you by my side." With those words, Levi's world changed. He understood the country was in the midst of a crisis, a civil war. The United States had been torn into two parts, with the southern states forming their own separate government called the Confederate States of America. But Papa was a teacher. He wasn't a soldier. No one would expect him to fight in a war. Levi remembered Papa's words, "Son, a man has to live his life the best way he knows how. I wish this war was not happening, but it is. You and I believe slavery is wrong. You and I love this country called the United States of America, but the fact is, it is no longer united. I cannot hide behind a pile of books and declare that because I am a teacher, I do not have to fight. Sometimes, son, you have to fight for what you believe deep in your heart." And so Papa went off to war. And we continue with Papa's letter on the left. "I almost laugh aloud when I think of how the poet describes the glory of war. I feel no glory in this war. It is cold and cruel, but I do feel that it was right for me to join in this fight to save our Union. How could I have respected myself otherwise?" We are encamped on a hillside outside Fredericksburg, Virginia. There has been fighting all around us. I am certain that we will see battle soon. Just remembering that long ago conversation made Levi fight back the tears. He wiped his face with the back of his sleeve, then dug his hand deep into his pocket. He pulled out a small brass button that had been removed from Papa's uniform. He held it in the palm of his hand, and he thought of the day when George Reynolds limped up to the front porch of the little white house with the bad news. "Mrs. Martin, Levi, I'm afraid your Papa has been killed. He died back in December during the battle at Fredericksburg. The entire Union Army suffered terrible losses. I was wounded pretty badly myself. That's why it took me a while to get here with the news. After Mr. Reynolds had gone, all they had left of Papa was a few personal belongings, which included the last letter he had written, the small brass button off his uniform, and their memories. Continuing with Papa's letter, I sure wish I had some of your good cooking, Sarah. A warm meal would go a long way to picking up my cold, damp spirits right now. You'll never guess who I had the opportunity to meet a few months back. President Abraham Lincoln. He came to Antietam to speak with General McClellan. I was lucky enough to shake his hand and to speak to him. I was very impressed by his sincerity and concern for the soldiers. Levi, Levi, dinner! Mama's voice sailed over the distance, interrupting his thoughts. He shoved the precious button down deep into his pocket, wiped his eyes one last time, and took off running. He must not worry Mama. He was all she had left. Between mouthfuls of venison stew, Levi told Mama about the excitement happening. Tomorrow was to be the dedication of the National Cemetery at Gettysburg. It had been 4 months since the terrible battle between the Northern and the Southern armies had been fought in the once peaceful fields and orchards surrounding their little town. Mama, there's going to be a parade with a brass band. The main speaker is going to be Mr. Edward Everett, who has traveled all the way from Massachusetts just to speak at our ceremony. But Mama, you'll never guess who is also going to be there tomorrow. President Abraham Lincoln. He came into town on a special train today. He's spending the night here in Gettysburg. Wouldn't you just love to meet him, Mama? Wouldn't you? Continuing with Papa's letter. Levi, I hope someday that you will have the chance to meet this great man. He was quite a tall man and looked even taller because of his stovepipe hat. He was dressed all in black, as if he were mourning the death of each fallen soldier. I remember his eyes looked so sad. I wanted to comfort his sorrows and tell him that it will be all right. This cruel war will end. The Union will be preserved. Levi, I know how you want to meet President Lincoln. I don't want you to get your hopes up, though. From what I've heard, there will be a large crowd at the dedication ceremony tomorrow. I doubt you will be able to get close enough to the president to even see him, much less to speak to him. Now, finish eating your supper and then make sure the dog is tied up. We wouldn't want him to bite the seat out of President Lincoln's britches tonight, would we? The next morning turned out to be a beautiful, crisp autumn day. It was the 19th day of November, 1863. In other parts of the country, the great battles between the North and the South raged on. This day, though, thousands of people poured into Gettysburg for the dedication of the new cemetery to honor the soldiers who had died there. Levi and his mama joined the group of people moving down the street. Mama was still clothed all in black out of respect for Papa, who had died only 11 months before. In the distance, a band was playing. Levi and Mama paused at the entrance to the cemetery so that they could catch a glimpse of the president as the parade of soldiers and the many important guests entered the grounds. When President Lincoln rode past on his horse, He happened to look in their direction and touch the brim of his hat as a greeting. Mama whispered, "There goes a man with the burdens of an entire country on his shoulders. I feel quite sorry for the poor soul." After the procession filed through, Mama and Levi followed silently with thoughts of Papa, who was buried so far from home. Continuing with Papa's letter. Far off in the distance, I hear music from a drum and bugle corps camped on the hillside. Night is falling, and I'm huddled in front of a fire trying to finish this letter. Levi, every day I see young boys who are not much older than you fighting in this war. I would not want you to ever experience the nightmares that I have seen in battle. Please, son, stay with your mama and protect her. The ceremony began with a flourish. The band played. Politicians welcomed the crowd to the special dedication of the Gettysburg National Cemetery. Women daintily dried their tears as the main speaker, Edward Everett, spoke of the bravery of these dead heroes. Levi, who was having difficulty seeing over the heads of the crowd, left Mama's side and climbed high into the branches of a large oak tree. From his vantage point in the tree, he could see not only the platform where the ceremony was taking place, but the whole battlefield. He thought about the day 4 months ago when he stood atop the hill by his own little house and watched the tired, weary soldiers march by. When the actual fighting began, Mama insisted they hide in the root cellar. He could still remember the thunder of the cannons in the distance and the horrible sights they found when at last they ventured out after the 3-day battle. Levi and his mama did what they could to help the wounded soldiers. They volunteered for months in the many hospitals set up all over town. Levi's thoughts were interrupted by the sound of applause. He turned toward the speaker's platform and saw President Abraham Lincoln walk towards the front. The president put on his spectacles and pulled from his pocket 2 pieces of paper. He cleared his throat and began. 87 years ago, our fathers brought forth upon this continent a new nation, conceived in liberty and dedicated to the proposition that all men are created equal. Now we are engaged in a great civil war, testing whether that nation, or any nation so conceived and so dedicated, can long endure. We are met on a great battlefield of that war. We are met to dedicate a portion of it as the final resting place. The world will very little note nor long remember what we say here, but it can never forget what they did here. That we here highly resolve that these dead shall not have died in vain, that the nation shall, under God, have a new birth of freedom, and that the government of the people, by the people, and for the people shall not perish from the earth. And continuing with Papa's letter. Although I wish that we were not apart, I feel that I am serving a noble cause in this war, even if I have to sacrifice my own life. The unity of the United States of America and the personal freedom that our Constitution stands for must be upheld. Remember, son, sometimes a man must fight for what he believes in. The crowd clapped politely, not fully understanding the importance of the message. President Lincoln turned and slowly walked back to his seat. He neatly folded the document and placed it and his spectacles inside his jacket as the ceremony came to an end. After standing for well over 2 hours listening to the speeches, most people were eager to depart for the comfort of their own homes. Levi, however, sat in the branches of the big old tree and thought about the words that President Lincoln had just spoken. He pulled from his pocket his papa's last letter. A jumble of thoughts rushed through his head. Levi, I hope someday you have a chance to meet this great man. His eyes looked so sad. I wanted to comfort his sorrows. Tell him that it will be all right. The Union will be preserved. Levi scampered down from the branches of the tree. With his papa's letter in hand, he rushed across the field, dodging the crowd of departing people. He was temporarily slowed down by the crush of people surrounding the speaker stand, all trying to get a word with the important people still lingering on the platform. He managed to push through to the front. President Lincoln was still there. Mr. President, he pleaded. President Lincoln, please, may I talk with you for a moment? His young voice shouted over the noise of the people surrounding the platform. 2 soldiers quickly moved in and started to push him back as Abraham Lincoln looked to see who was calling for him. President Lincoln, please, I must see you. It's about my papa. Please, sir. Let the boy through, please, the president said as he held out a welcoming hand for Levi. Now, what is it that I can do for you, son? I'm fine, sir. There's nothing you can do for me. I think I can do something for you. My papa, before he died for the Union cause, wrote me a letter. He told me about meeting you one time at Antietam. He thought you had sad eyes. He wanted to give you comfort, but could not do so at the time. I hope you don't think I'm out of my head, but I really want you to read my papa's last letter. Maybe you'll get some measure of comfort from it as I do. Papa's letter. Sometimes even one person can make a big difference. To you both, I send all my love. My thoughts are with you daily, and my prayers are with you nightly. When the last great battle has been fought and the guns are silenced, I will return to you. Until then, your loving husband and father, Robert. Amid the noise and confusion of the crowd, Abraham Lincoln sat quietly and read the letter. Then Levi showed him the small brass button that was taken from his papa's uniform. The 2 of them sat with their heads together and spoke quietly for a time. Many a person wondered why a great man like President Lincoln was taking up valuable time speaking with a young boy. And many wondered what they were saying to each other. As President Lincoln finally rose to leave, he handed Levi back the letter and the brass button. He took Levi's hand in his and said, "Your papa was right. Sometimes one person, even a young person, can make all the difference in the world. Thank you, son. I shall remember you fondly." Levi placed the letter and the button deep into his pocket. He turned and walked slowly toward the gates of the cemetery where Mama was waiting for him. He threw his arms around her and said, "You'll never guess who I've been talking with, Mama. Never in a million years." And there's a beautiful panorama of the fields of Gettysburg. Well, I hope that you all have enjoyed my reading of Last Letter to Gettysburg, and I really hope that the book inspires a love of history in some of our young readers. Thank you.